The room grew quiet as the silver-scaled Supreme Counselor Tejo rose from his seat. His 6 fingers tapped once on the podium, activating the holographic display showing the vote count. Every council member had voted the same way. "The motion passes," Tejo announced, his voice a rumbling bass that echoed through the vast chamber. "From this day forward, humans are banned from all combat roles in Galactic Union space." Captain Jaiwo Park sat very still in her observer's seat. She wore the blue and gold uniform of Earth's Space Command, her dark hair pulled back tightly, her face betraying nothing. Inside, her stomach churned. This vote would change everything for humanity's place in the galaxy. The other alien representatives began to talk among themselves. Some looked relieved. Others cast nervous glances toward Jaiwu, the only human in the room. "This is not a punishment," Counselor Tejo continued, his large eyes blinking slowly. "It is for the safety of all species, including humans themselves." Jaiwu thought back to the Battle of Proxima Centauri 3 months ago. She had not been there, but she had seen the recordings. The Morgoth Dominion had attacked the human colony with a massive fleet, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they faced Commander Han and his small battalion. Han had done the unthinkable. He had flown transport ships directly into the enemy's path, using their destruction as cover. He had vented reactor plasma as a weapon. He had ordered soldiers to spacewalk between ships to plant explosives by hand. Breaking every rule of engagement, Han's forces had destroyed the Morgoth fleet that outnumbered them 10-1. The Union had cheered their victory, at first. Then the full reports came in. The methods. The casualty counts. The psychological profiles of the surviving human soldiers, who seemed oddly untraumatized by what they had done. That was when the whispers began. "Captain Park," Counselor Tejo said, pulling Jaiwo from her thoughts. "You will carry this decree back to Earth. The details of implementation will be worked out in the coming days." Jaiwo stood and bowed, as was custom. "I understand, Supreme Counselor. May I speak briefly?" A murmur ran through the chamber. This was unusual. Tejo tilted his head but nodded. "The United Earth government will accept this ruling," Jaiwo said clearly. "But I wish to remind the Council that humans joined the Galactic Union in good faith. We have contributed to medicine, art, and science. Our soldiers have died protecting Union worlds." "No one questions human contributions," interrupted Counselor Nari, a bird-like being with iridescent feathers. "It is the manner in which humans fight that concerns us." "What you call innovative, we call reckless," added another counselor. "What you see as determination, we see as frightening disregard for life, even your own." Jaiwo looked around the room. These beings, from worlds hundreds of light-years apart, had formed a peaceful union spanning a quarter of the galaxy. Their cultures were vastly different, but they had found common ground in how they conducted warfare. Rules. Limitations. Lines that were never crossed. Until humans came along. "We evolved as pursuit predators on a hostile world," Jaiwo said quietly. "We don't know how to give up. It's not in our nature." "Precisely why this ban is necessary," Tejo concluded. "Your kind will be valuable in diplomatic, scientific, and cultural exchange. But the battlefield brings out something in humans that the rest of us find." He searched for the right word, unsettling. As the meeting ended, an elderly Volaran diplomat approached Jaiwu. His skin was pale blue, his movements slow and deliberate. "You know," he said softly, so only she could hear, "my people have an old saying, fear not the weapon, but the hand that wields it with joy. We have watched humans in battle. You do not fight like beings who hate war. You fight like beings who have embraced it as art." Jaiwo wanted to object, but the words stuck in her throat. She had seen the recordings from Proxima Centauri. The human soldiers, even as they faced death, had displayed a strange exhilaration. Later, as her ship prepared to depart for Earth, Jaiwo composed her message to the United Earth government. How would they take this news? Humans had only joined the Galactic Union 30 years ago, the newest species by far. They had worked hard to prove themselves worthy allies. Now they were being told, you are too dangerous. Even for war. As the ship entered warp speed, Jaiwu wondered if the Council was right to fear human nature. Or if someday, they might have reason to be grateful for it. 5 years had passed since humans were banned from combat. Admiral Doyun Kim stood on the observation deck of the training vessel Dauntless, watching as human pilots ran simple drills in outdated ships. These exercises were all they were allowed to do now. Not real combat training, just basic maneuvers to keep skills from completely fading. Another perfect run, Admiral, said his aide, Lieutenant Yunha. Though I'm not sure why we bother anymore. Doyun nodded slowly. Since the ban, Earth's once proud fleet had been repurposed. Their warships now served as transport vessels, research platforms, or floating museums. Human soldiers worked as advisors, teaching theory but never practice. Some had quit in frustration, returning to civilian life rather than face the humiliation. His communicator suddenly buzzed with an alert he hadn't heard in 5 years. Priority 1. Galactic Council Direct Transmission. Clear the room, he ordered. The junior officers quickly filed out as Doyun pressed his palm to the scanner. A hologram flickered to life, Supreme Counselor Taeho himself, looking visibly shaken. Admiral Kim, the alien said, his scales reflecting the light oddly. Protocol Ultima is now active. This is not a drill. Doyun felt his heart skip. Protocol Ultima was a classified contingency, created secretly alongside the human combat ban. It would be activated only if the Galactic Union faced an existential threat. What's happened? He asked, already reaching for his command tablet. The hive mind has emerged from Sector 9. They've already overrun 3 border worlds. Millions dead. Our forces are. Taeho's composure broke for a moment, they're being slaughtered. The hive mind. All Union species knew of them from ancient records, a collective intelligence controlling billions of drone bodies, consuming all in their path. They hadn't been seen in 10,000 years. Many thought them extinct. The combat ban on humans is temporarily lifted, Taeho continued. We need your unique capabilities. How quickly can you mobilize? 24 hours for the first wave, Doyun replied without hesitation. 1 week for full deployment. You have 12 hours for the first wave. The hive is moving faster than anything we've ever seen. The transmission ended. Doyun stood motionless for exactly 3 seconds, processing everything. Then he hit the emergency broadcast button. Attention all Earth Defense Forces. This is Admiral Kim. Protocol Ultima is active. I repeat, Protocol Ultima is active. This is not a drill. All personnel report to battle stations. All retired combat veterans are now recalled to active duty. Across Earth and its colonies, the message triggered a response unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 5 years. Old soldiers pulled uniforms from storage. Retired pilots rushed to hangars. Engineers who had been maintaining ships as museum pieces began converting them back to war machines. At the New Seoul Military Academy, Commander Jun observed her cadets as the alert came through. These young men and women had joined the military after the ban. They had never seen real combat, only trained for a day they thought might never come. What happens now, Commander? Asked one young cadet, his eyes wide. Now, she said calmly, we remind the galaxy who we are. In his private quarters, Doyun opened a locked cabinet and removed his old combat uniform. The medals and badges earned during the Proxima Centauri battle gleamed in the light. He had kept it ready all these years. As he dressed, his personal communicator beeped. It was Jaiwo Park, now Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. They're desperate, she said without greeting. The hive attacked 3 systems simultaneously. Their drones just keep coming, wave after wave. Union forces are fighting by the rulebook, and they're losing badly. And now they want us to break the rules for them, Doyun said, fastening his collar. Can you blame them? The hive doesn't care about Geneva Conventions or Union combat regulations. They're consuming entire worlds. 12 hours later, the first human battle group jumped into the Kestrel system, where Union forces were barely holding the line against the Hive. On the command bridge of the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Kim received his first view of the enemy, a swarm of biomechanical ships that moved with perfect coordination, surrounding a Union defense fleet. "Open communication to all human vessels," he ordered. When the channel opened, Doyon spoke the words 5 years in waiting. "This is Admiral Kim to all human forces. The restrictions are lifted. Combat Protocol Alpha is now in effect." He paused, then added, "Remember Proxima Centauri. Remember why they feared us. And show them why they need us now." Across the human fleet, men and women who had been forced to hold back for 5 long years prepared to unleash everything they had been keeping inside. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had been banned from war. Lieutenant Nina Lee stared at the tactical display showing Epsilon Station. The space around the massive Union outpost swarmed with red dots, Hive drones, thousands of them, moving in perfect formation. Behind her, the alien station commander, a tall Phrygian named Olin, watched nervously. "We should evacuate," Olin said. "Standard Union protocol calls for retreat when outnumbered 5-1. We are outnumbered 20-1. Nina didn't look up from the display. "How many cargo shuttles do you have?" "Cargo shuttles?" Olin blinked his large eyes. "Perhaps 30. But what use are transport vessels in combat? And the mining operation on the station's asteroid belt, they use explosives, right?" "Yes, but..." "Get me those shuttles and all the mining charges you can find," Nina said. "And I need every human on this station, military or civilian, in the main hangar in 30 minutes. The Phrygian started to object, then remembered the special orders from Central Command. When facing Hive forces, human officers have complete tactical authority. 1 hour later, engineers stripped the cargo shuttles of everything non-essential, replacing seats and storage compartments with mining explosives rigged to manual detonators. Civilian miners and shop clerks sat alongside soldiers in briefing rooms, receiving crash courses in shuttle piloting and emergency procedures. "This is insane," whispered a Karate security officer to Olin. "Those shuttles have no weapons, minimal shielding. They'll be torn apart." "They're not meant to survive," Nina explained, having overheard. "They're meant to confuse." The Hive operated with a single mind controlling billions of drone bodies. Its strength came from perfect coordination. But this also meant it thought in patterns, logical, predictable patterns. The Hive had never encountered humans before. It had no pattern for them. When the attack came, the Hive expected Epsilon Station to follow standard Union defense protocols. Concentrate firepower, form shield walls, protect civilian areas. Instead, the station seemed to go mad. Cargo shuttles burst from launch bays, flying in chaotic patterns. Some charged directly at Hive ships. Others seemed to flee, only to loop back around. The few actual human fighters mixed among them made the pattern even more confusing. From the command center, Mina directed what looked like complete chaos. Her orders sometimes contradicted each other. Units separated, then rejoined at seemingly random moments. "Section 3, break right now. Shuttle Group 5, full speed ahead. Mining team, drop your charges and scatter." The Hive drones, programmed to respond to recognizable tactics, hesitated. Their collective minds sought patterns but found none. A cargo shuttle piloted by a human cook crashed into a Hive carrier, its mining charges detonating on impact. 3 more followed, each hitting critical systems. The Hive diverted resources to protect its larger ships, leaving gaps in its formation. "There." Nina pointed. "All fighters, concentrate on Grid 7. Human pilots pushed their ships beyond safety parameters, flying through gaps that closed behind them. They fired not at the most dangerous targets but at seemingly random points, which turned out to be neural relay nodes the Hive used to coordinate its drones. After 3 hours of battle, the impossible happened. The Hive forces began to retreat, their perfect formation breaking down. "They're running," Olin said in disbelief. "You actually drove them back." Nina nodded grimly. "We lost 40% of our people. but saved the station and its 10,000 inhabitants, Olin replied. No Union commander would have made that trade. That's why they banned us, Mina said quietly. And why they need us now. Across 3 sectors of space, similar reports flooded into Union command. At Proxima Outpost, Commander Jiho had converted mining lasers into weapons. At New Darwin Colony, Captain Subin had used the planet's atmospheric interference to hide ships that struck when the Hive least expected. On the frontier world horizon, Major Hyunjin had evacuated civilians into the planet's unstable volcanic region, a place too dangerous for most species but where humans could briefly survive, luring Hive forces into a trap. In the Galactic Council emergency chamber, Supreme Counselor Tejo reviewed these reports with mixed emotions. The humans were winning battles that his military experts had deemed unwinnable. But the methods shocked even veteran commanders. They fight as if they have no fear of death, a Karate general observed. No, corrected Ambassador Jaiwo Park, who had joined the War Council. We fear death as much as any species. We just don't let that fear control us. Back at Epsilon Station, Mina walked through the hangar bay, now filled with wounded and the bodies of those who didn't return. A young civilian who had volunteered to fly a shuttle sat alone, shaking. She sat beside him. First combat, she asked. He nodded. I was just a maintenance worker. I never thought I'd. His voice trailed off. What's your name? Minsu. Well, Minsu the maintenance worker, today you helped save this station. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. How do you do it? How do you make these choices? Mina considered this. The Hive thinks as one mind. That's their strength and their weakness. They can't understand why we would sacrifice some to save many. They can't understand chaos as strategy. They can't understand humans. On the other side of the hangar, Olin watched the humans tend to their wounded, prepare their remaining ships, and plan their next move. He finally understood why the Union had banned these beings from warfare. Not because they were bad soldiers, but because they were terrifyingly good ones. Dr. Youngsu stood before the Galactic Council, his hands steady as he operated the holographic display. Around him, the alien counselors watched with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. On the display, video footage showed human soldiers in battle against the Hive, scenes of incredible bravery mixed with shocking violence. As you can see, Youngsu explained, pointing to a soldier who continued fighting despite a serious wound, humans possess physical and psychological traits that make them uniquely suited for combat against the Hive. Counselor Tejo leaned forward. Explain these traits in simple terms, Doctor. Youngsu nodded and switched the display to show a human skeleton beside those of other species. First, humans evolved as pursuit predators. Unlike ambush hunters who rely on surprise, humans chased prey to exhaustion. This gave them exceptional stamina and a mental state we call the hunter's patience, the ability to follow a goal for days without stopping. The display changed to show brain scans. Second, the human brain has an unusual mix of empathy and aggression. They can form deep bonds with teammates while simultaneously planning violence against enemies. Most species excel at one or the other. A Phrygian counselor raised a slender hand. But many species have these traits to some degree. What makes humans so different? Their compartmentalization, Youngsu replied. When humans experience trauma, they can mentally wall it off and continue functioning. A Karate warrior who sees his squad die might be incapacitated by grief. A human soldier processes that grief later, after the mission. The display showed footage of human soldiers laughing together shortly after a battle where many had died. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. Is this not a sign of psychological damage? Asked a bird-like counselor. It is exactly that, Youngsu confirmed. But humans can function with types of damage that would disable other species. And their short lifespans, barely a century, create a psychological urgency. They take risks other species wouldn't consider because their time is always running out. In another part of the council station, Ambassador Jaiwo Park met with Admiral Doyeon Kim. They walked through a garden designed to accommodate multiple species, the artificial sunlight creating patterns through alien plants. The council is disturbed by our success, Jaiwo said quietly. They expected us to help, but not to turn the tide so quickly. Doyen picked up a fallen leaf, studying its blue veins. They banned us because they feared us. Now they need us, but that fear remains. The xenopsychology report doesn't help. Dr. Young-soo is presenting humans as predators with empathy. Isn't that accurate? Before Jaiwo could answer, her communicator beeped. Her face paled as she read the message. The hive has changed tactics. They're specifically targeting civilian populations now. Across the war zone, the hive mind processed its defeats. For 10,000 years, it had consumed worlds without significant resistance. Its drones operated as perfect extensions of its will, overwhelming enemies through superior coordination and numbers. But humans fought differently. They created chaos within order. They sacrificed pieces unexpectedly. They ignored pain and fear in ways the hive couldn't predict. The hive adapted. It analyzed thousands of battle recordings, studying human behavior. It noticed patterns. Humans became irrational when innocents were threatened. They broke formation to save wounded comrades. They protected children even at great cost. On the colony world New Sol, these new tactics became horrifically clear. The hive bypassed military targets, instead sending swarms of smaller drones directly into civilian areas. They specifically targeted schools and hospitals. The human defenders faced an impossible choice: maintain strategic positions or break ranks to save innocents. Captain Minji-san watched her carefully planned defense collapse as soldiers abandoned positions to rescue civilians. The hive had found humanity's weakness: compassion. They're baiting us, she told her officers. They know we'll choose to save lives over holding ground. Then what do we do? Asked her lieutenant, watching as another squad diverted to help evacuate a school under attack. Minji's eyes darkened. We use their understanding of us against them. If they think humans are predictable in our compassion, we'll show them how unpredictable we become when protecting what we love. She opened a channel to all human forces in the sector. This is Captain Sun. The hive is targeting civilians to distract us. They think this makes us weak. She paused, watching drone ships descend toward the colony. Show them how wrong they are. In the council chambers, Dr. Young-soo continued his presentation. The hive believes it has found a human weakness. But they fundamentally misunderstand human psychology. When humans protect others, they don't become weaker, they become more dangerous. They call it fighting with nothing to lose. The alien counselors exchanged troubled glances. One of them finally asked the question all were thinking: when this war ends, what happens to the humans? Can beings capable of such violence ever truly return to peace? Young-soo had no answer for them. Commander Juno Choi stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiant, looking at the swirling mass of energy that marked the hive's central nexus. Around it, thousands of drone ships formed a protective shell. The hive had pulled back forces from across the galaxy to defend its core exactly as planned. All ships report ready, Commander, said his executive officer. But I must note again that direct assault against these numbers violates every principle of tactical doctrine. Juno nodded calmly. That's why it will work. The hive has studied our previous battles. It expects tricks, feints, and chaotic maneuvers. So we give it something else entirely, the most basic, straightforward attack possible. On the command screen, he could see the entire human fleet assembled, 300 ships carrying the best soldiers Earth had to offer. Beyond them waited the Union's forces, held in reserve by Juno's direct order. This final battle would be fought by humans alone. Send the signal, Juno ordered. All ships, full advance. Across the fleet, captains acknowledged the order with grim determination. Everyone understood this might be a one-way mission. The casualty projections were severe, likely more than 40% losses. No other Union species would consider an attack with such odds. As the human fleet accelerated toward the hive defenses, Juno opened a secure channel. Team Shadowstep, status report. In position, Commander, came the quiet reply from Captain Mina Lee, whose stealth team had spent 3 days secretly approaching the Nexus from below the galactic plane.
Ready on your mark. Team Phantom?
Also in position, reported Captain Minji Sun from the opposite angle.
Waiting for the distraction to begin.
While the main fleet charged forward in a conventional attack formation, these small infiltration teams had used human intuition to find paths through the Hive's defenses that sensors couldn't detect. During earlier battles, human pilots had noticed subtle patterns in Hive drone movements, almost like water flowing around underwater rocks, revealing hidden structures. The Hive detected the approaching fleet and responded exactly as expected, committing massive resources to counter what appeared to be a suicidal frontal assault. Drone ships peeled away from the Nexus by the thousands. The battle was brutal and direct. Human ships formed tight formations, focusing fire on specific points in the Hive's defenses. They took heavy losses but kept pressing forward. When a ship was destroyed, the survivors regrouped without hesitation. No retreats. No fear. From the Defiance Bridge, Juno watched the casualty reports mount. 20 ships lost. 50. 80. Still, the fleet advanced, pushing deeper into the Hive's territory than any force had ever reached. The Hive is fully committed, his tactical officer reported. 95% of their combat units are engaging our main force. Juno nodded and opened the secure channel again. Shadowstep, Phantom execute now. Deep within the Hive formation, Mina's and Minji's teams activated their engines and raced toward the Nexus core. Their small, agile ships slipped through gaps in the distracted defense grid. Each carried a special payload, not conventional weapons, but devices designed to interface with and disrupt the Hive's neural network. The Hive realized the deception too late. It tried to recall forces to protect its core, but the main human fleet fought with renewed intensity, blocking the return path. "We're at the core structure," Mina reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Beginning neural disruption. The human scientists had theorized that the Hive, despite its alien nature, would share certain vulnerabilities with neural networks. The disruption devices didn't try to destroy the Hive, only to introduce conflicting signals into its network, something like pain in a biological organism. When the devices activated, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the battlefield, drone ships suddenly lost coordination. Some froze in space. Others flew in random patterns. The perfect unity that made the Hive so dangerous dissolved into confusion. 3 hours later, it was over. The Hive sent out a signal that Union translators interpreted as surrender. Its first communication to any species in 10,000 years contained a concept that xenolinguists struggled to translate. The closest approximation was respectful terror and acknowledgement that humans had done what the Hive thought impossible. The war was won, but at great cost. Human casualties exceeded 45%. Ships that should have carried thousands of crew members limped back with hundreds. Yet in debriefings, the survivors showed no regret. They had done what was necessary. 1 month later, the Galactic Council convened to reconsider the human combat ban. Ambassador Jaiwo Park was surprised when Admiral Doyeon Kim spoke in favor of strengthening the restrictions. "The ban exists for good reason," Doyeon told the council. "What we become in war is necessary sometimes, but should not be our normal state." The final treaty established the Human Crisis Response Directive, an acknowledgement that in dire emergencies, the galaxy might need its most dangerous species. But the controls would be even stricter than before. As the session ended, a Karate admiral approached Jaiwoo. "You know," he said quietly, "we didn't ban humans from war to protect ourselves from you. We did it to protect everyone else from what we become when facing you in battle." He looked troubled. "When we fight humans, we must become more like you to survive. And that terrifies us more than anything."